Hello, I'm Dynast Amir.
So I reached out to another friend of mine. I said, look, I need to go on vacation somewhere. Where should I go? He said, go to Africa. And not only am I going to go, I'm going to explore a new country. So I went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Mali, Senegal, Morocco, Liberia, Namibia, Kenya, the Voodoo Festival in Ouida, Gambia, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. It's been a beautiful experience, just learning more about our culture, our indigenous culture. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. I'm in search of my roots. In finding that, I would experience my Uhuru, which is freedom.
Till next time, Dynast Amir, I'm out.
Peace, family. I hope all is well. I hope you're Monday. Man, it's already Monday. It is already Monday. We're almost into a new month. Y'all, and listen, the year is almost over. The year is almost over. And it's going by fast. It is going by fast. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. All that good stuff. Again, make sure you hit the like button and please make sure you subscribe. Let's see here. What announcements do we have today? Let's start with the tours. Let's start, the other way around. Usually we start with documentary. Allow me into the platform. West Max, give me around 30 minutes. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a link to the chat room. And once I add that link to the chat room, you'll be able to call in and add to the conversation. Again, you'll be able to call in and add to the conversation. But let's see your tours. Guys, come and join us in Sierra Leone. Again, come and join us in Sierra Leone. Shout out to Ivy Dream. Shout out to King Joseph, my Salome brother. Shout out to Ayana in the chat room. Shout out to all of you. Nice seeing all your beautiful, I can't see y'all faces, but nice seeing all my beautiful people, supporting and rocking with Dynast Amir. Let me scoot over a little bit. Yeah, so go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. Again, go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. We are rolling to Senegal in May. Again, we are rolling to Senegal in May. We'll love for you guys to join us. Again, we'll love for you guys to join us in Senegal. Again, Senegal this May 21st to the 30th. Come and join us. Again, come and join us in Senegal. Again, in Senegal, May 21st to the 30th. Come and join us. Visit Danfo, DANFO.Africa. Visit Danfo, DANFO.Africa. We need you in Botswana. Visit more African countries. West Max, listen, if you pay for my ticket, West Max, listen, brother. If you pay for my ticket to come to Botswana, I'll be there. You just let me know. Again, you say we need you in Botswana, brother West Max. Get your people together, fly me out there, and I'll be there. No problem. So again, go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. Again, go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. We're running a promotion as far as for the early bird special. Deposit is $250 instead of $500. Again, deposit is $250 instead of $500. All right, deposit is $250 instead of $500. We are yeah, listen, y'all want me to come to listen, I'll come. I'll come to Botswana, wherever. Just, buy my ticket. I mean, because I'll be honest, like some of these countries aren't. Listen, at the end of the day, I want to visit as many African countries as possible. I would like to visit all 54. But right now, Botswana isn't in the plans. I'm pretty much focused on West Africa for right now. Again, I'm pretty much focused on West Africa for now. But, if you say, hey, Donis, listen, we want you to come out here, my team want you to come out here, present, speak to the people, put on some type of conference or seminar, no problem. I'll do it. Fly me out. Again, fly me out, no problem. Toasted, travel within to Africa is so expensive. Exactly. That's another thing. Like getting from West Africa to Botswana, which would be like Southern Africa. It's expensive. It's expensive to fly around Africa. Now, to fly around East Africa is less expensive. Like getting between like Kenya and Tanzania and Ethiopia and even getting from there to South Africa is not as expensive. But coming from West Africa that way, it's expensive. And then there's no direct flights really, especially if you're coming from West Africa. I'm gonna have like 2-3 layovers just to get to Botswana from like Senegal or Sierra Leone. I'll probably have to go from Freetown to Accra, then Accra, maybe to, I'm trying to think, Rwanda. I don't know. It's tough to get around Africa, especially when you start off in East Africa. But again, listen, I'll be out there. Just let me know. Set it up, fly me out. I'm there. But anyway, so guys, Senegal, May 21st to the 30th for the Jazz Festival. May 21st to the 30th, Jazz Festival. So again, come and roll early bird special, $250 on the deposit. $250 on the deposit. Let's see what else we got here. Documentary. If you have not bought the documentary yet, In Search of Uhuru. Again, if you have not bought the documentary yet, In Search of Uhuru. And guys, I apologize. The site was down yesterday, but it's back up now. All right. So again, if you have not bought the documentary, In Search of Uhuru, please go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com and cop the documentary. Again, go to searchforuhuru.com, click on that link, and it is going to bring you here. Once you click on that link, it's going to bring you here to the site and buy the documentary. Listen, there's 117 people watching right now. If you're 121 now, and hit the like button. If you are part of this 121, and if you have not bought the documentary yet, family, please go and buy the documentary. Please go and buy the documentary. I will greatly appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you all so much for the support. Thank you all so much for the support. Somebody says Ethiopian Airlines is expensive as hell. Listen, Air Senegal from New York to Dakar like just regular coach, it's only like $700, which isn't bad at all. Again, it's only like $700, which isn't bad at all. So again, go to searchforwho.com and buy the documentary as well. No, this is just my documentary. All right, this is just my documentary. Okay. In Search of Uhuru, guys. I've entered the documentary into some festivals, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Again, I've entered some of the documentary to some festivals, so we'll see how that goes. All right, that's it for the announcements. Let's jump right into it. Inflation in Ghana and in Nigeria. Man, listen. From my understanding, right now, I haven't been to Ghana in a couple years, but I remember when I was in Ghana, this was back in 2000 and either 2020 or 2021. It was 2020. It was right before COVID. 2000. No, actually, it would have technically been 2021. Yeah, it was January 2021. I was in Ghana, and listen, the exchange rate, $1 was about 4.5 CDs. $1 was about 4.5 CDs. In Nigeria, $1 was back in 2018. $1 was about 360 naira. Again, $1 was about 360 naira. Now, from my understanding, let's pull this up real quick. Now, from my understanding, it's 13-1 in Ghana. It was like 4.5 when I was there last. All right, as Ghana waits for a financial bailout from the International Monetary Fund, this is from Bitcoin.com. Report this 11 hours ago. Ghanaian cedi slides further versus the US dollar to become world's worst performing currency. Jesus. As Ghana waits for a financial bailout from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, that's not good. The country's currency continued its slide versus the dollar after the respective currencies exchange rate slipped to just under 15 CDs to $1. That's, man. It's 15 now. Goodness. Like I said, when I was there 2021 in January, it was like 4.5. Again, it was like 4.5. Following this latest plunge, the cedi has now depreciated by more than 55% in 2022, and this makes it the world's worst performing currency. The depreciating Ghanaian currency, the cedi, recently touched a new low versus the US dollar on the Forex parallel market after it reportedly slipped by 12% in just 4 days. Reports of the Ghanaian currency slumping to a new low versus the greenback came shortly after the cedi's 3.3% slip on October 17th confirmed its new status as the world's worst performing currency. According to the My Joy Online report, the acute shortage of US dollars among banks and bureau de change is the primary reason why the cedi has now fallen by more than 50% since the start of 2022. To support this assertion, the report cites testimony from one unnamed banking executive who urged monetary authorities to make a quick and decisive move to halt the currency's decline. Another unnamed banking executive suggested that individuals hoarding of the U.S. dollar may be compounding the CD's woes as well. Man, Ghana eagerly awaits IMF bailout. However, in a different report, My Joy Online quotes Ghana's finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta, who expressed his surprise at the CD's rapid depreciation. He claimed that Ghanaians importing goods earmarked for the upcoming Christmas holidays are partly to blame for the currency's collapse. It's quite perplexing to see where it's going. Of course, typically in October, people are importing for Christmas, and maybe there's a rush for the dollar. But my expectation is that once we also conclude with the fund IMF, that will lead to the fund's disbursement early next year. To do that, Ofori-Atta reportedly said, man, we still need the IMF. Also, in the report, the finance minister appeared to imply that once the IMF's bailout funds are dispersed, the city will stabilize. Ofori-Atta also implored Ghanaians to avoid panicking, as doing this tends to put pressure on the currency. He also insisted Ghana's economy is in fact in good shape. Meanwhile, at the time of writing, some media reports suggested the CD had lost further ground versus the greenback and was now trading at under CD 15 to 1. According to a My Joy Online report, this exchange rate between the two currencies suggests that the CD's depreciation against the greenback now exceeds 55%. Jesus. And the Naira is not in good in good. The Naira isn't faring well as well. So, it's just unfortunate. Speaking of, it surely ain't Wakanda. Listen, the movie comes out in a couple weeks. Y'all, the movie Wakanda Forever. Seems ever since they stopped letting people trade money on the streets. Oh, you can't trade, you can't get money off the streets anymore. Because listen, if it's 15 from the banks on the street, it's probably like 20. Or at least, 17. Again, if it's 15 at the bank, it's like 17 on the street. Same thing with the Naira. The Naira is like at the bank, like 500, 550. You could probably get 7 something on the street with the Naira. That's what I'm saying. So is there a black market in Ghana, or is it illegal now? Because black market is the way to go. Like I said, black market is the way to go. That's how you do it. Oh man, hold on. Here we go. The Naira. The Naira has continued its free fall across the exchange markets. Is not Nigeria's forex exchange remained depressed amidst. In fact, I got some Naira right here. I got some Naira. Here we go. I got 500 Naira, y'all. It's 500 Naira. I got 500 Naira right here. 500 Naira. Right there. Bam. Post-trading data at the weekend showed that the Naira during the week depreciated at both the official and parallel markets. At the official investors and exporters window of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, the Naira depreciated by 29 basis points to Naira 441.67 per dollar. At the parallel market, okay, so this is probably what you get at the bank, 441.67. At the parallel market, the Naira fell faster by 700 basis points to 750 per dollar, Naira per dollar. So this is probably what you can get on the street now, 700 to 750. And this is probably what you get if you go to the bank. Nigeria's external reserves have declined by 0.6% to $37.7 billion, according to latest figure tracked at the weekend. An analyst expected the naira and the nation's forex reserves to remain under pressure as Nigeria struggles with poor oil production, surging inflation, and backlog of unmet forex demand. It's coming. Digital currency is coming. The central bank digital dollar, central bank digital coin (CBDC). It's coming soon. Give it a couple years. It's coming. It's coming. So like I said, that's coming soon. So that's how these African currencies are doing. They're not doing too well. Not doing too well at all. And guys, I was watching. We're gonna watch this real quick. It's I read this article in regards to 200 Nigerian doctors moved to the UK in 1 month. But when they get to the UK, the Nigerian doctors are now complaining how bad the conditions are in the UK. So it's like they're fighting to get to the UK, but then once they get to the UK, they're complaining about how hard how bad the conditions are. So let's watch this video from BBC. And after that, I'll go ahead and open up the lines.
We're close, guys. God, this is the part where I feel really, really tense. We're like, oh God, I'm coming back to this prison again. Because it was a prison to be like, coming back again to this place.
Dr. Augustine is a Nigerian doctor who came to the UK 2 years ago. His recruitment by a British company called NES Healthcare meant working extremely long hours in a private hospital, with potential consequences, he says, for patients' health. Today, he's taken me back to that hospital in the UK that he says almost broke him.
It's my room over there, the 4th floor. Up there. Yeah, you can see the windows open. So there's a doctor up there, and right now I'm doing the same job I was doing. I still feel anxious because, I can't explain what it means, like just being confined to this place for 7 days, 24/7. Every day I work in this hospital, I always thought that something could go wrong.
Augustine is one of 9,500 Nigerian doctors licensed to work in the UK. Recruitment from abroad has never been higher, with 40% of doctors trained overseas.
I would wake up at 6:30, be on the ward at 7, and it was an 80-bedded hospital. So I was looking after all of the patients on the ward, outpatient setting, the CT and X-ray, and
Hey, I read an interesting fact earlier today that 77% of the black doctors in America are Nigerian. Anybody want to dispute that? Your thoughts on that? Over 70%, I think it was 77% of the black doctors in America are Nigeria. Efren Rojas, please schedule a show about Kanye and what he represents as a social touchstone. He is at the nexus of so many social cross currents. Efren, let's do a show. Me and you. Let me know when you're free. You can come on and you can add to the conversation. But I wanted to do a show covering his most recent interview with Piers Morgan. I did want to cover that. He told Piers Morgan, "Shut up, boy." He was like, "Shut up, boy." I mean, yay. I'm sorry, yay. Yeah, I'm sorry, yay. He was like, "Shut up, boy." So yeah, that's what I read. Somebody said that's a lie. I don't know. And in fact, and people disagree with me. I think there's more doctors in the UK and America than there is in all of Nigeria. Thoughts on that? In fact, somebody said there are more doctors in America than Nigeria. Now, here we go. Back to the story.
I'll be working from 7 up until 11.
At night?
Yeah, at night. And I would think that I'm meant to go to bed, just get some rest. But then when you go to bed, you get a call, all patients complain about this, and your sleep is ruined. So I'm not able to sleep again up until 7 again. And the cycle continues for 1 week.
But how do some of these doctors get here? Newsnight has been investigating the story for months. We've discovered a scandal about large-scale recruitment and exploitation of foreign doctors in the UK that reaches as high as the British government. Nigeria's economic hub, Lagos, is a mix of oil-driven wealth and life-shortening poverty. Most here don't live beyond 54. Just 5 miles from the centre, Makoko, a floating city where some people have never seen a doctor.
Doctor Nigerian now, they are traveling abroad. Because of the salary they are collect every month, it's not reach anywhere. That is why they are traveling, they go abroad.
It's a brain drain that's worsening each year. The World Health Organization has stepped in, compiling a list of poor countries with healthcare shortages, from where the rest of the world should never actively recruit doctors. The British government incorporated that list into its own code. They call it the Red List, effectively making Nigeria a no-go area for British medical recruiters. However, here in the city, we found hundreds of young doctors queuing for what's called a Professional and Linguistic Assessments Board test, or PLAB-1, a first step to practice in the UK. And here's the thing, the exam is set by the General Medical Council in London, and the people you see in blue bibs work for the British Council, which is sponsored by the Foreign Office and is overseeing the exam. It was made clear we weren't welcome. We'd just been thrown out of the car park of the examination hall, and it was the British Council who threw us out, and they said, it's just not good to have you here. And they said it's about the candidate's privacy, but I wonder if it's also to do with the fact that they know that Nigeria is on the red list, and they just don't want to be associated with the brain drain. 3 hours later, the candidates emerge into the Nigerian sunshine. Where do you...
Did you guys catch that last part? They said that Nigeria is on the red list and they don't want to be associated. UK doesn't want to be associated with the brain drain. What's the red list? Hold on, let's go back and listen to that again.
The car park of the examination hall, and it was the British Council who threw us out, and they said, it's just not good to have you here. And they said it's about the candidate's privacy. But I wonder if it's also to do with the fact that they know that Nigeria is on the red list and they just don't want to be associated with the brain drain.
Yeah, what's the red list? Oh, okay. Red list is countries with doctor shortages. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. And some I know there are a couple people that got upset when I read that. I don't know if it's a fact. That's what a Nigerian was saying. That there are more Nigerian doctors in America than in Nigeria. Let's continue.
3 hours later, the candidates emerge into the Nigerian sunshine. Where do you want to go if you succeed?
I want to go to the UK.
UK. I want fulfillment in my craft. I want to get to, the NHS has a working system, and that's what I want.
In London, we described what we'd seen to the British Medical Association, the trade union for doctors in the UK. Is the British government complicit, do you think, in active recruitment?
Certainly they will be aware if the British Council is enabling mass scale taking of the PLAB exam. It would be, I think, misleading for the Department of Health and Social Care to say that they did not know about this Indeed, they are trying to take some active steps with the code of practice to discourage it.
But they know this is a red list country, don't they?
Absolutely.
And yet this is overseen by the British Council, which is funded by the Foreign Office.
Absolutely. So there's an element of one hand giving in the code of practice and the other hand taking away.
The Department for Health and Social Care rejects that and says responsibility for arranging PLAB exams lies with the GMC, which is independent of government.
Remember Augustine, the doctor from the start of this report? Well, it was whilst he was studying for the second part of those PLAB exams here in the UK that he was approached by NES Healthcare, the company behind me, and later offered visa sponsorship and a potential job. It sounds like that's a breach of the government's code of practice on no active recruitment from red list countries. NES says it's not because the company's not a recruitment agency and the doctors it engages with have already committed themselves to working in the UK anyway. But a spokesman for the Department of Health and Social Care told us that the code does apply to NES and so it's in breach of it.
Augustine had signed a contract with NES that opted him out of the Working Time Directive.
Do you think that you were so tired that there was a potential that you weren't doing the best or weren't delivering the best care for the patients?
Yes. Yes, and that was my worry, because I knew that working tired puts the patients at risk and puts myself also at risk as well for litigation and other things. So I was really, really worried.
If he was too tired to work, his contract permitted deductions from his salary. NES says that's to cover the cost of a backup doctor.
I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. I knew everything was wrong.
Whoa, so they deduct from his salary to cover the cost of a backup doctor? Golly. Jesus. They deducted from his salary. I hope they're covering like maybe his room and board too. I don't know. My gal works for NHS and balling but stress.
Contract permitted deductions from his salary. NES says that's to cover the...
Yes, and that was my worry, because I knew that working tired puts the patients at risk and puts myself also at risk as well for litigation and other things. So I was really, really worried.
If he was too tired to work, his contract permitted deductions from his salary. NES says that's to cover the cost of a backup doctor.
I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. I knew everything was wrong. And that's why I raised concern. It wasn't right.
Did it act as a disincentive when you knew?
Hold on, we only got 12. I am. See, I can't see the likes. We only have 12 likes. Man, if y'all don't hit that like button. If y'all do not hit, please hit that like button. We only have 12 likes. Guys, hit the like button. $12 likes. Hit the like button. 26 likes. Y'all hit the like button. $83 now. Hit the like button. $101 now. Hit the like button. And listen, if you're watching this and if you have not bought the documentary yet, I need you guys to go buy the documentary. Yeah, stop the show. Hit the like button. Okay.
You were going to lose money if you were actually doing the right thing and getting a replacement to come in.
Yes.
Then you were being penalized for that.
Yes.
This is who NES doctors often come to for help. Dr. Jenny Vaughan from the Doctors Association. I asked her if these long hours could be excused in any way. At night, for instance, when doctors are only on call, not actually on the ward unless needed.
If you're on duty, and you're in a hospital room, you could be called at any time. That is a basic understanding of a doctor who's on duty. That's why no doctor in the NHS on the NHS contracts does more than 4 nights consecutively, because we know that it's frankly not safe.
She's particularly concerned that NES doctors are not allowed to leave their contracts without 3 months' notice or face more deductions from their salary.
This is a slave type work with low pay and excess hours, the like of which we thought had been gone 30 years ago. It is not acceptable for patient safety reasons. It is not acceptable for doctors.
Back in Nigeria, more GMC exams are organised for the new year, and Britain will continue to recruit doctors here because it's cheaper than training them at home. It raises an uncomfortable question. How can we be serious about honouring the Red List and thereby helping protect some of the poorest nations on earth when our own system can't function without shopping for doctors abroad?
All right, listen, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat room. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat room if you want to call in and add to the conversation. The link is in the chat room. Well, James, thank you for buying a documentary. Again, thank you for buying a documentary. In fact, we're going to take a commercial break real quick, guys. Let's take a commercial break.
Hello, I'm Dynast Amir.
So I reached out to another friend of mine. I said, look, I need to go on vacation somewhere. Where should I go? He said, go to Africa. And not only am I going to go, I'm going to explore a new country. So I went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Mali, Senegal, Morocco, Liberia, Namibia, Kenya, the Voodoo Festival in Ouida, Gambia, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. It's been a beautiful experience, just learning more about our culture, our indigenous culture. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. I'm in search of my roots. In finding that, I would experience my Uhuru, which is freedom.
Till next time, Dynast Amir, I'm out.
Again, guys, if you have not bought the documentary, make sure you go to searchforuhuru.com. Make sure you go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary. If you have not bought the documentary, make sure you go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary. All right, Larry, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I was just going to talk to you about that situation with the doctors, which is quite serious. It's twofold. There's also a major problem in the UK where they have a shortage of doctors and nurses. A number of things have happened in the UK. So what's happening is that people who do become GPs are then taking their skills elsewhere to work in other parts of the world, Australia and whatnot. And there's a shortage of British people signing up to be nurses. So the NHS and even private hospitals are now hiring nurses from different parts of the world. There was a company I was consulting for last year, and my job involved consulting for psychiatrists, psychologists, nurse managers. It was at a mental health institute. I was there doing a contract. I was consulting for them for a while. When I was talking to the manager of the nurses, he was talking to me. We just started talking as I was helping him. He began to tell me about how he was in the process of hiring nurses from Ghana, Sierra Leone, Philippines, Thailand. And I asked him, it's because they have a shortage. So the problem is twofold. A, in Nigeria, the doctors, like I think it was on your channel about 2 months ago, I played a video where the doctors were talking about how they hadn't been paid in 4 months, 6 months.
Right. Yeah, on strike. Yeah.
So they couldn't make a living. So they were going on strike. That's why they were leaving. And then the other problem is in the UK, there is a shortage of people signing up to be doctors, because they also used to hire a lot of Eastern European doctors in the UK. So you can find that your GP will be from somewhere in Eastern Europe, Poland, or somewhere else. So there's a shortage in the UK for people signing up to be doctors to work in the NHS. And there's also a lack of doctors being paid properly in Nigeria. So that's what it then contributes to this situation. So that guy mentioned the long hour shifts, and as was mentioned in your video, it's also dangerous. But then this all ties up to the other thing you mentioned, which was at the start, which was the economy, wasn't it? When you started talking about the
inflation, the dollar, and
a lot of things are contributing to that problem. One of them, obviously, is the loans that Nigeria has taken out, the debt, trying to service the debt. It's spending 90% of the money it should be using for its own country. It's using that to pay off the debt that it owes. And then of course there's political instability, and then there's what they call dollarization, where you have a lot of Nigerian businesses who are basically replacing home legal tender by making transactions in dollars rather than naira. Of course, the Central Bank of Nigeria doesn't promote this. They're against this. They don't want people doing that. But there seems to be a thing where, I guess, if you were going to a school, the fees that would be quoted to you would be in dollars sometimes instead of naira. So there's this dollarization where the dollar is coming into is being very popular, which also ties in with all these crypto traders. But I don't want to go down that route because that's something. But that's mainly the problem. So that problem is contributing to certain jobs where people are struggling to make a living, and so they're leaving, looking to find work elsewhere to benefit their lives.
I'm gonna bring Gaston up on. Gaston up. You want to address this super chat? Gaston up.
Says, why FBA have a point about African immigrants? Why aren't they going back to help their people? I at this stage I don't deal with these type of conversations, because when people say that African immigrants not going back, it's kind of like, if someone were to make light of the police, harassing and abusing African Americans, that's in bad taste, right? The state is wrong for doing that. So if the African states are not properly doing right by their citizens, how do you blame the individual immigrant who is just trying to survive? It's always easy. Like I always say, I remember when I was in the South, I told some white boys, I said, look, N-words don't control interest rates, right? I said, we don't control interest rates. We don't control immigration policy. So it's interesting that you have all this hatred for the, people who aren't in positions of power. It's easy to point the fingers at them. So that super chat, if I'm reading it correctly, it seems like he's saying, why aren't the Africans going back home to help their people? It's like, even if you went back home, what are we really going to do? Like I just saw something right now. The people who are agitating for a Yoruba nation just signed a pact that said, it's all cool. We're going to support Tinubu. And it's like, come on, man, you guys, this is nonsense. You understand what I say? So even if you go back home, how are you all these immigrants that you come across from Nigeria?
Is that I forgot the guy that was arrested in Benin Republic. Is he still locked up? I forgot his name.
Oh, Igboho? No, he's free. But free. I hope they free. No, Sunday Igboho. You talking about Sunday Igboho? Yeah, Sunday Igboho. No, he's free. He escaped. But I hope they free Henry Oka, right? Henry Oka has been in prison for the longest, and no one's saying anything. He's in a South African prison. Jonathan threw him in there. No one's talking about free him. But you know, again, look, even if you go back home, the Nigerian that's at Oxford or Harvard, what are they really gonna do when it's time to go up against heavy hitters? I don't want to say any names, you know, but there's heavy hitters in politics in Lagos, in Ogun State, in Delta State, in Imo State, in, you know, Zamfara State. Are you really? These guys understand raw power. They're gonna start moving with the guns. They're gonna do voodoo. They're gonna push power at you. And if you're not prepared to fight them, then what is an immigrant really going to do other than come to America, you know, dance with some white girls and try to enjoy life as best as they can? Like, immigrants are powerless for the most part because they couldn't affect change of their own state. But I wanted to make some points. I put it in the back chat. I don't know if you saw it, Dynast. Can you post it on the back chat? What I post? It's a short video. It's literally about 30 seconds. It talks about Japan. And I just want to say these points because Niger came on recently and he said some excellent points that, you know, Nigeria has to build up their defense. But I think when we look at Africa, we look at America, look at the UK, look at America, you know, some of these other countries, what we're not acknowledging is that there are mechanisms in place. When we talk about currency, one of the problems of currency in Africa for years, I don't know if Valerie remembers this, right? In the 90s, right? The Ghanaian cedi was like the joke of Africa. Like, you could have like 10 Ghana must goes filled of cedis, and it was, you know, but they were able to restructure the cedi and come out with the new cedi, right? And of course, they're making the same mistakes. What are the mistakes that we're making in Africa? Well, the mistakes we're making is that we're import heavy. Our consumption is import heavy. I've been screaming, and every time I get on these platforms and I say, hey, look, try to be more local, look at the village, all these people type in the chat, oh, you're making fun of the rich, you're making fun of Lekki people, we're human beings too. And it's like, well, you guys are the ones causing these consumption problems because you guys have these Western demands. And so when you have these excessive Western demands, now, of course, the West doesn't want your naira, they want your dollar. They want a euro. They don't want naira. So you have to get foreign currency. That's the first problem. We're consuming way too Western, from rice.
But Gaston,
yeah, go ahead, Larry.
You're largely correct, and I don't disagree with you. But in regards to the imports, it's complicated in the sense that, like you probably know this, the top import for Nigeria is refined petroleum.
Well, so I want to get there. I want to get there. I want to get there. That's just on a practical level. So again, even with the refined oil, like I said, hopefully Dangote is able to get that refinery at full capacity. I hope nothing happens to him because, you know, every time an African person gets in a position to do something, weird things happen. But hopefully he gets that and we can get that. But now, in terms of the infrastructure with the loans, because like I think Dinah said, most of the money that Africa is generating now is to service external debt, which they were using to build infrastructure. The problem, you know, let's say, let me say these two things and I'll be done. If we're going to be an import country, particularly about Nigeria, the problem of Nigeria right now is that all the imports, for the most part, are going and choked only through Lagos, the Tin Can Apapa Wharf port, right? So if they open up the other ports, that is Cross Rivers, Benin, you can do some things in Port Harcourt and other places, but they have to open up the entire South. All the South, there's Delta State, every place in the South has to have a functioning and running port. But as I've done my research, it's powerful mafia interests that are involved. They're not going to let that Lagos port go away. I'm just being real. Then ethnicity is going to come into play. I don't think the Yorubas are going to be happy about that. Let's just be real. I'm not dissing the Yorubas. Shout out to them. They're not going to want that money maker to go away either, right? So if we open up the ports, because we're a country of importers, it would at least reduce the price of imports because now somebody can stay in their place in Onitsha and not have to rush to Lagos to get their imports. You can stay in Port Harcourt and not have to rush to Lagos to get your imports. Your imports you can be literally in your village right now and order your goods from Alibaba, AliExpress, or whatever, and use your Alipay because they accept Naira.
I
just want to say this last point. So the other point is this: with that video, Dynast, if you can play it after Go Black, please. I posted in the back chat. We don't have internal taxation. The video I'm talking about, Dynast, is Japan. If you make $1 million in Japan, 52% of that money goes towards taxes. Now, whether that's good or bad, you can see the development that Japan has. You can see the amenities that Japan has. Africa is broke. Even with all the money in from the commodities that we sell, we are literally broke. We cannot afford to have the type of amenities that we want as a society. So we need internal taxation. That's what I want to point out. Hopefully you can play the video after Go Black, Dennis.
Okay, go ahead, Go Black.
Hey, welcome. I mean, thank you for having me, Dynas, and peace and blessings to each of one of the panel and people out in the chat. I just wanted to add on to my wife is a medical doctor, so I wanted to go ahead and add my experience with that medical field there being in America. That there's not just a an African thing of doctors leaving. It's also an American thing. You know, my wife, she's a medical doctor by choice, working in the hood. And, you know, in doing that, you find a lot of those in the medical field want to stay away from the Black community or areas that are lower income. And so many doctors flee to either larger cities, thriving suburbs, or even you get paid more money if you're going out in the boondocks somewhere. And so, but there are many doctors nowadays who are leaving, going into international, which my wife will be doing next year, be traveling internationally in that sector. One is way more profitable, and it's less demanding in how the medical field is, because of the lack of those who, the medical professions who COVID, a lot of people walked away being behind the forced mandates, or those who were just a fear of just getting sick. And so I just wanted to put the 2 cents in there that, you know, I don't see anything wrong with, I talked to medical doctors when I was in Ghana. I see some of the footage that are out there in some of these places in these African countries, that what they pay their doctors and what their doctors go through, which I know what they go through, is deplorable. And when you getting only paid, a doctor in Ghana gets paid $1,400 freaking dollars a month. And that is a shame. And I don't know why that they cannot respect their teachers and their doctors or those in the medical field, because those who are in government run over to Europe to get taken care of medically. So why would not some medical doctor want to go for the money that they can also build their life, their families, being in countries where they can 1,000 times over get paid, and then also where many people are sending money back to help and assist their family, you know. So I think it's something that really needs to be looked at, but I don't think it's just an African thing or a problem. I think it's just really a universal thing. A lot of countries are trying to snatch up this profession of in the medical field into their countries, because everybody's hurting in the medical field as far as the shortage are concerned. And yes, a lot now of the industry are even bringing in these nurse practitioners to do the jobs of some of these medical doctors that are like when my wife is in the family medicine. And so they save half the cost in the pay when you're paying a nurse practitioner than a physician. So I just want to put that in there. There's that even those medical doctors in America are going to better offers that are coming from different countries, that they see that, you know, they don't have to put that work in as, you know, like they're putting in America. You know, my wife, when she gets off of work, her day hasn't ended. You know, she got another 3 hours that she has to do, finishing up charts and labs and all these other things that they put those hours in, where it's a total different ball game in a lot of these foreign countries who are seeking out to her, that they will pay her a whole lot more and just a lot less of demand. So that's what I got.
Dynas, can you play the video if you get a chance? It's very short. It's literally 30 seconds. Because I really want to
let me pass it to Chrissy first, and I'll play. Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yes, hi everyone. I just wanted to say, just to respond in the chat about, you know, this whole FBA fleeing argument. The reason many of us leave, and when we do, where many of us are actually a better asset to our nations not there than being there. Because I can tell you for Jamaica, people in the diaspora, we contribute $3.3 billion every year to the Jamaican economy. We are right under tourism when it comes to industry. So without that money, the Jamaican economy would collapse. I'm pretty sure it's the same for Nigeria, Ghana, and these other places. So, when people say, oh, we're fleeing, whatever, there's a strategy to what we're doing. Like, we know what we're doing, and people in America complain. America's not perfect. But when it comes to when you talk about oppression, whatever, you don't really today, your grandparents, yes, but you don't know oppression. You don't know not having running water and not having light and no roads and the bridge collapsed and the government didn't replace it. You don't know that life. So it's easy to sit down in your luxuries and talk about what other people should do when you've never even left the United States. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, let me play the video real quick.
In Japan. Gross annual income $1 million. Income tax $404,163. Surtax $8,487. Local inhabitant tax $97,300. Health insurance $5,720. Welfare pension $4,990. Unemployment insurance $3,000. Total tax $523,660. Net income $476,340. If you make $1 million in Japan, 52.4% will go towards income taxes. This is what $1 million salary looks like.
So Dennis, I'm not saying that it's
let me pass Jose first and I'll pass it to you. Go ahead, Jose.
Yeah, hello, Dynas.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Gazdamov said. Before you can handle security in Nigeria, yeah, I do agree. I agree with Nigeria as well about putting in place security measures, because security is very important if you want to move forward, to make progress as a country. Without that being addressed, there's no way, because you can only make progress when there's peace, basically. So, but you have to first address the mindset of a lot of the people in Nigeria as well. The mindset has to be the kind of mindset that is Pan-Africanist in nature, that loves its own people, would be key if before you start talking about security. You see, so in Nigeria we have a system where, in fact, what we're having in Nigeria is a failure of state and its leadership. And we've been doing the same thing over and over and over and over again for over 60 years. I mean, it's pure insanity to think that we're going to be expecting a different result, but we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing at the end of the day. The brain drain in Nigeria is understandable. I mean, I live in Europe. I'm based in the UK. My background is in engineering. And the reason why I left Nigeria in the first place was not just because of economic reasons, but also the tribalism as well that I was experiencing. So before a lot of things before security can be put in place, things that are mindset, the educational system, Nigeria's educational system, for instance, has gone down the drain. I mean, my parents speak a lot better than I do, especially those old folks that grew up in the 50s and the 60s. So you can see that if you look at the educational system in Nigeria, it has gone down significantly. It's a shame the kind of graduates we've been producing in the last 30 years. So a lot of things have to be addressed. And another thing is I agree with what Chris has said about it's necessary. It's necessary for some people to go abroad to seek greener pastures, to gain more advanced skills that you might not get access to certain equipment or certain training that you might not get in Africa. But at the same time, we should be doing a cross collaboration with our peers in Africa as well, like what Libya and China did. They sent this during Gaddafi's time. It was giving scholarships to students from Libya to go study in America, UK, Germany, all over the world, and to bring back those skills back to Libya. And that's why Libya became as successful as it was during Gaddafi's time. Same thing with China. When China closed down its borders for many years, it was restructuring and changing the mindset of the people to love it, so to love its country and to love themselves before they now opened it up to to the outside world. So that's what Nigeria needs to do. We need to get our leadership right, and I do not support this presidential type of leadership. What works for the white people, the Europeans, it shouldn't work for us. We should create a system where the best of the best should constitute a member of our think tanks, like Council of Elders, where the brains decide what happens in the country, not some mediocre riffraffs who because they are generals in the army and they have guns, they're just getting down, seize power. So there are so many things we need to start addressing, and we need to start from the basics. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Elvis.
Yeah, thank you, Dynast. Shout out to the panel. Yes, like I want to quickly disagree with Chrissy. That's why I called back then, because the reality is, it's true. A lot of our people, we do flee our countries, and the reasons I think the guy previously enumerated them. Lack of infrastructure, lack of appreciation of public service in Africa, especially. Those things will cause anybody to leave their country and move, to the west for greener pastures. And another problem that we're having in Africa, especially in my country, is like Gold Black was saying, you have these nurses, nurse practitioners who go back home, and some of them are, performing surgery and things like that. And a lot of these people perform, medical malpractice. There was a couple of stories back home where this guy got charged because he was doing like, cataract surgeries on kids, and he's just only a nurse practitioner. So the reality is a lot of these people leave simply because the pay is very, very small compared to, relative to their level of education. They come to the West, they make a lot more money. They eventually go back home, not to work for hospitals, but instead they'll open up their own clinics, and become their own boss. But the reality is, being a doctor in Africa in most countries is just not a lucrative job because, politicians won't pay you your just wage for being a medical doctor. So a lot of people seek to leave our country. That's why many African countries have bad health systems. And I think Nigeria is like the saddest because there's a lot of brilliant doctors and a lot of brilliant people just, in general in Nigeria, and a lot of brain drain is happening in that country. And the UK benefits the most from that brain drain. Same thing in Liberia. A lot of our brightest and greatest leave and come to the US. So it's a problem in Africa that won't be fixed until we get our leadership situation, situated. Our leaders have to appreciate, public service, even though most of these doctors, have their own private practices, but just the wage for them is just way too low for the amount of education that they get. So I want to disagree with Chrissy on the point that she made. And when, these quote unquote FBA say these things, certainly it hurts our feelings, but there's some truth into it because a lot of us, we flee these countries, looking for greener pastures. That's a fact. You may disagree with that
Elvis,
statement,
did we
but
say
it's
that to
true.
the Irish? Did we say that to the Irish who left and the Italians who left Europe and they've stayed here for centuries and they haven't gone back from Ireland and Italy and all these places that they came from? during
Well,
the potato
if you made that
famine. Now, I'm
statement
just
during
saying,
the
why didn't
time,
the Irish go back and build Ireland after they came to America? They've been here for hundreds of years. Well, why isn't anyone telling them to go back?
no. You have to understand what I'm saying. Two things can be true at the same time, right? So if whoever Tyreek or whoever make that statement to the Irish, if they're having an argument, he says, yeah, that's why you guys fled Ireland when you're going to the famine or whatever was going on in Ireland at the time. It's a true statement. They fled. A lot of them ran away and came to the United States. Same thing with some of the Italians. So that statement could be true, right? But now they're here. They don't consider themselves quote unquote Irish anymore. They're Americans of Irish descent, but they're firstly Americans. So if we as Africans come here and we say, well, we're still Africans, but yeah, we live in America and we left our home countries, you know, that
Well,
statement is valid that we
then I guess
fled.
my other
We got
question,
to accept it.
then my other question to you is, like I was saying earlier, realistically, let's be real. You're from Liberia, I'm from Nigeria. What can an immigrant really do to facilitate change? I want give me three practical, because like now in Nigeria, right? There's a guy who runs politics in Lagos. He's a big boss. There's a couple bosses. What Nigerian that you see in Harvard or in your daily life is really going to go to Nigeria and challenge that dude without a bullet in their head or a bullet in their family's head? Like, so can you give me three practical things that they can do to facilitate change without getting shot in the head? Because they'll do it. Like Nigerians, there was just the shooting in Ajogula recently. You know what I'm saying? So like, this is how they get down, especially with politics. So what are you going to tell immigrants practically, not like something pie in the sky? Give me three things that immigrants can do to facilitate change other than remittances.
Right. And that's the thing, gas them up. I don't have the answers, I'm not this big old genius to have all the answers. I don't know. My honest answer to that question is I don't know. But the reality is we do leave our countries and we flee to the west for greener pastures. That's a fact. We can acknowledge that. Now the other things that come behind it, we can argue about it, but that's an empirical fact that a lot of us leave, especially those who are educated and can have better jobs, better paying jobs in the west. We leave. So if you're looking at the political structure and the corruption, the mafia like structure that forms around politicians in Africa, that's a fact. It happens in most African countries. I'm not telling you that we can go back as a African diaspora and change the entire country, because a lot of us go back there and we think we're better than the people who are on the ground because we have quote unquote better education. So that's something that we see a lot of people in my country. I want to speak for my country. You see a lot of people from the United States. They might be a middle level manager, but they go back home and want to be ministers because they feel like they're so far superior than the people on the ground. So there's also that rift between diasporan Africans and the people on the ground, because we go back there and we think we're more educated, we know more, we can do better. So for me, it's becoming even more of a gap now between diaspora Africans and their people who are back home in their home countries. There's some jealousy that's forming, especially in my country. So I don't know the answer to other questions. I'm just giving my 2 cents and how I see things. I mean, I think we have to be honest when we're trying to critique ourselves and other people. We look in the mirror and say, yes, what she's saying or what he's saying is true. This is something that we do. We acknowledge it. Now we can look for the solutions to that problem, but we first have to acknowledge the truth, which is we leave our countries and we come here. If they make that argument, fine. You can agree with them. Say, you know what? You're right. My country is fucked up. I left because I wanted to have a better life. That's a true statement that you're making. Then you can argue about the other, stuff that comes after that. So if you have an answer to your own question, I would like to hear it, because I'm
No,
not a genius. I don't have
listen.
all the answers.
Look, I really wanted to ask Dynasty and Larry a question, because I don't, Larry, you saw that video. It's in the back chat. Maybe you can watch it on your own time. Dynasty, how can we build a tax system in any African country? If you guys have any ideas on it, because in my opinion, the ability to create that tax is what allows you to float those bonds, right? So you can finance your infrastructure, so you can have the money to pay your doctors, raise your hospitals. If you don't have a strong taxpayer base, I mean, look at Japan, right? The Africans today would marvel at Japan and their history, from them being able to resist Commodore Perry after he came with the gunboats and they really developed themselves. So what can Africa do to build an actual strong tax system where they can float these bonds and take care of their internal issues.
I mean, personally, I don't know. I think what's needed is you need a strong economy. A couple of days ago, I think it was here on Dynast channel, there was a video he played. It was a lady, Magat, and she was basically talking about the importance of the economy and free market and how small businesses, medium-sized companies. I think I mentioned this like 6 months ago because somebody was asking me the same question. It would be good to have like, a situation where businesses are allowed to freely trade and to get bigger their small businesses, because from the small businesses you're able to tax them, you then get the money, you're then able to build your military. So you need revenue coming in. And if a lot of the people, as we've mentioned, are not even getting paid in their jobs, it's going to be difficult to collect money from them. I was going to mention there was a situation in Cross River State where the governor turned up to a church. It made the news, and he was donating millions. And the Anglican bishop thanked him, but told him to instead use that money to pay the civil servants in Cross River State because they hadn't been paid from 6 months to 12 months. So, if people aren't getting paid, it's going to be difficult to get taxes. So I just think the basics is helping with the economy, small businesses, being able to trade and get bigger, have more freedom. And from them, you collect the money there, you build your military, things like that. But then, of course, you've got the major problem of the IMF loans, and I say loans, plural. And we're talking about loans which are in the trillions. I mean, Nigeria owes like trillions of dollars. That's the other thing.
No, billions. It's billions of dollars, but trillions of naira.
Well, that's the IMF. But then don't forget, Nigeria also owes about 5 countries money from China.
Oh, yeah, true. The Paris Club and all these other. Yeah, I agree. Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So it builds up. So, and then the problem is, as you know, the value of the naira, it's depreciated. So, and plus the Nigeria has to pay that loan back in dollars. So it gets really
so then, Larry, you just mentioned free trade. Like, look, I'm reading because I'm sitting here just reading as much as I can every day. Like during the time from the 1500s, right, up until the 1900s, you had literally, I'm counting, you had Guata, Bani, Old Warri, Old Calabar, New Calabar, Bani, Brass, Lagos, Akasa, Sapele, Degema, Port Harcourt, and Okrika. These were all ports that the Europeans were trading, right? That they were coming in bringing goods. Why is it now, as of today, there's only 6 major ports in Nigeria, and that's Lagos, that's Apapa, that's Tin Can, that is Calabar Port, that's One, and Port Harcourt. Those are the only ports, and Warri, those are the only ports that are opened. And it's like, this is crazy, right? There are other places that we can open, because again, I'm not a fan of importing, but if we are going to import, like you said, to get that free trade going, to get businessmen to be able to move things, I'm reading on some of the ways that they
importing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not importing. Small businesses would be flourishing, medium-sized businesses would be flourishing, and if anything, it wouldn't be so much importing, it'd be exporting, because like the major imports we do is like refined petroleum, cars, wheat, which is very surprising. Why are we importing wheat? Packaged medicaments, telephones, and we import mainly from China, Holland, the United States, India, and Belgium.
What about our conspicuous consumption in other day-to-day? For example, right? Like we're not producing phones, right? So we're importing our phones. I'm talking like the things that we use. Like even if you go to any market, you go to Tejuo Show Market, most of the stuff there, most of it is not produced in Nigeria. There's no made in Nigeria tag, other than maybe your palm oil and your agriculture, and even that some of that might be important. Like you said, the wheat, the rice, and things of that nature. So I'm saying like, until we get away from importing, let's at least open up all the ports that we can open, right? Like I'm reading the reports, Onitsha River Port, they were supposed to have completed that, not completed, right? They can open up the, right here it says the Bakassi Deep Sea Port, they have the Abaka Deep Sea Port. There's so many ports that they can open where, again, a person can stay in their locality and import their goods. And then once they finish importing their goods, then, like you said, they'll probably be able to start producing at home, but they're not doing that. It's like only thing that we can import has to come through Lagos. So now if you're in Port Harcourt or if you're in Onitsha, you have to go to Lagos, which is an expense. So now you got to charge more to the people. The people already don't have that type of disposable income. So you can see like the domino effects here. And it's like just bad management.
Yeah,
And
but
I'll just end with this, Jose. I really think, and I've said it, and I know, Larry, you don't like it when I say it. These rich Lekki, VI, Abuja people, they go to Oxford, they go to Cambridge, they go to Harvard. They don't care. These conversations, they don't have these type of conversations in their house. They just are happy to have a Maserati, happy to have a little Swedish girl, happy to have their wife with the Brazilian hair down to the kneecaps, and they're fine. They don't give a damn. There's nothing, they're not going to have these conversations.
I'm not going to.
Well, 1 second. Let me read these. Let me read these super chats real quick. O'Shea Duke Jackson, thank you, brother. Nigeria or Africa will only change. The people who have opinions will do the work. And then let me read this other super chat. Mr. Sandman, Nigeria wants to build a tax system the government must loan to and subsidize business owners to promote employment and business growth.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I was saying that.
All right, go ahead, Philip. Mr. Larry, go ahead and pass it to Philip.
Hello. I was just gonna say, fun fact, gassed him up. One of the major exports from Nigeria is special purpose ships. We exported over $775 million of special purpose ships to places like mainly to India, Spain, China. So I'm like, special purpose ships. Does that mean we're building ships? So I've been searching and doing research. Apparently, somewhere, somehow, Nigeria is building special purpose ships. And special purpose ships is basically light vessels, fire floats, dredgers, floating cranes. And I'm like, what? Okay. And they're exporting this. But I guess the money somehow is getting tied in, paying off all these loans to like the IMF. And there's a whole bunch of like institutions that Nigeria is paying off as well. Places like the African Development Fund and the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, and the Islamic Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. So there are all these organizations as well as nations. And so I guess it doesn't matter how much money Nigeria wants to make through its exports, a large amount's going to be tied up trying to pay off the loans.
All right, Philip, go ahead, Philip, unmute yourself.
Dynast, I didn't plan to come on here today.
You never do. Hey, listen, you claim that you never plan on coming, but you always show up.
Dude, you bring the topics, man, and I'm like, damn it, I gotta get in here. So, and I apologize for cursing that. Leary, gas him up, Elvis, and Jose, greetings. And I just wanted to, you guys brought the right questions. And I'm not an expert on this. I know a little something about it. I just wanted to throw this 2 cents in there, which is Leary raised maybe a month or two ago, probably the $1 million question about the debt and how do you manage the debt with any of the stuff infrastructurally that any of these countries want to do, right? And so Gassimup's question about, well, we got to build a tax basis and how do you develop that? And we got a big problem. And what I was trying to say in the chat was this. Each one of these countries that has like what the Nigerians are fleeing to has a strong tax basis by which they pay or subsidize their healthcare system. In the United States, it's a combination of things. It's the taxes, but it's also our social safety net of all the people that are on Medicare and Medicaid, and then a very expensive private healthcare insurance apparatus that is tied into Wall Street banks, right? So when you look at a country like Nigeria, you've got, and I've tried to hook up Dynast with a buddy of mine, Afam. He's got an organization with his dad. I think his dad is a Nigerian doctor, where they're building hospitals throughout Nigeria, and they're basically fundraising. He's here in LA with Hollywood and so on and so forth, but they're building hospitals one by one like that. That's not how you build a healthcare system, though, by the way. It's a good thing and a supplement, right? But a nation state cannot build a healthcare system by foreign charity. That's not how it's done. So
you are a traditionalist. You'd rather the government invested in public infrastructure, using the money from the people to build the hospitals, I'm guessing. I don't think that's
But
bad.
Larry, that's pretty much every system. Is there any other system that does
I'm
different?
not,
No, I'm not saying.
not
I'm saying, is there another system that's different?
well, that's what Lindsay was mentioning to us, that these people were doing it through donations, and he's pointing out that it's pathetic. So that's another way that could be done, which is, as he's pointing out, is not very good.
Well, look, what in Afam's organization is called GANACO, GEANCO. It may be ganeco.org if you want to see their organization and what they're doing. No, I mean, it's beautiful, the work that he's doing to get these hospitals built, and they're doing some supplemental stuff for schools, particularly for girls. That's beautiful, but that's not how you build a nation state's healthcare. And what I wanted to say was, look, we did not in the United States have a tax basis, if you want to call it that way. We didn't have income tax until Lincoln. So the way that the initial infrastructure was built was on foreign tariffs. We had a tariff system. And then from there, Lincoln implements the income tax system, which then goes to a small incremental government tax on corporations, which you later see in the trust busting years becomes a problem, right? With the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts of the world. So as comparative, sure, it is possible that any one of these African countries could have a foreign import tax. But one of the things that I put into Elvis, I've been watching the channel with the Liberian politics and history with Caw comes on there quite a bit from your channel, Dynas. And what I see in Liberia, and I could be wrong, I'm no expert, is that they're not actually controlling a lot of their infrastructure that they could get taxes from. And I suspect that this is true in a lot of these countries. I know it was a problem, and people bring it up all the time, about in Nigeria that Jesse Jackson took part of the negotiations with Dutch Shell. And part of those negotiations was supposed to be that the Nigerian local population was supposed to get training to work on the higher end jobs there. And what wound up happening was that they do the grunt work, but they're not getting access to work on the stuff that earns money. And my point is, that's actually how you build a system. You have to have taxes. You have to have, let's say you don't go high on the income tax. You at least have to have some level of corporate tax, but then that means that you have to have accountability from the government to be able to collect that tax.
Hey, Philip, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Sorry for
sir.
cutting you off.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
and I think you're making some great points, right?
Yeah, okay.
And my question to you would be, I know you're a lawyer. I'm not sure if you're a tax
On a
lawyer,
good day,
but
Elvis. On a good day.
right. But the problem we have in Africa, right? And I think, well, I won't even say Africa. I won't generalize it. I'll say Liberia, for example. We don't have a unique identification number, like a social security number, right?
Okay.
So, like you're talking about how the government can collect the taxes from the citizens, right?
Yeah.
For example, our biggest tax, revenue comes from, like you said, our seaports, our Freeport in Monrovia.
Okay.
And you're talking about the terminals. We have this APM terminal from, I think, the Netherlands, who are helping us with dredging our ports and things like that. And they're taking like half of the revenue from that. And that's our biggest revenue maker, which is our seaports. So I'm asking you the question right now. I have my own ideas, but you're somebody who is a lot smarter than I am. I want to know what your idea is. How can a government like Liberia effectively collect taxes from their citizens without having a unique, identification number to track, and tax their citizens.
I mean, that's a problem, Elvis. What I would say is there are states in the United States that don't have a heavy income tax.
Well, I missed that. Liberia might not have an identification number, but Nigeria does. Is it called an NIN number?
Yeah, sure. We have NIN and the BVN.
Sure.
Yeah, they phased out the BVN, so it's pretty much NIN now.
No. Your bank, you still got to use your BVN at the bank.
Nah. Listen, they phased that out, bro. It's all NIN now.
Nah, Dynast, I was just in Nigeria like 3 months ago.
I was there too. I have a BVN, and I couldn't do shit without my NIN. I couldn't.
No. What I'm saying is that. All right, go ahead.
let Philip answer the question, please.
Okay, but that's interesting too that they have two different numbers, and I haven't read enough on their system as to how it interacts with the contribution to the state funds. But to answer your question, Elvis, you can do it with a sales tax. The problem with sales tax is that it really punishes poor people, because everybody, like if you put a sales tax and you're buying milk or whatever it is that is, your staples, that it doesn't matter how much money you make, you all are paying the same amount. And if you're poor, you don't have a lot of money to spend. So sales taxes can be punitive to the lower end of your society, unless you add a subsidy. So what I would say is you can do a couple of different things. One thing is that you can have a program like they had in Vietnam, where any corporation that you incorporate there, they take 51%. So they own 51% of that company. You may control it, but then they can put that 51% into a fund, or they can borrow against it as a bond, right? So you can do it either way. It's more complicated if you do it the second way, where you try to borrow against it as a bond. But basically what you have to do, and this is the big problem that African countries have, in my view, is they don't have a hard currency. And what we were seeing in the UK there, in my view, was the fallout from the pound dropping. And they kind of have a scheme where their currency is super, super hard, right? So by making it super hard, then it has high purchasing value, but it's hard to get it. They don't circulate as much, right? So they basically have an elite class of really rich people that you don't really interact with. And then everybody else is more or less the same. They're working class / middle class, depending on where they are in that scheme. I'm sure O'Leary can speak to this better than I can. But
Phil,
no, man.
No, I wanted to say, because you just made a great point. When we look at the currency, right, it does seem that Africa's problem, like you look at China, right, we know that the yuan right now is severely undervalued, right? And so a lot of times I was on the channel the other day, I was saying, hey, listen, look, I'm not against having an alternative to the dollar, but don't get so happy with the yuan, because once the Chinese start to, increase the value of their currency, everybody's going to be crying blood, right? But the problem is African currencies are so weak because they don't have strong manufacturing. If you have a weak currency, you want to have strong manufacturing and exports, which Africa doesn't have. So it seems to me the alternative, and I think you and Larry might have a great point to this, or Jose, why not African leaders say, you know what, our currencies are weak. We open up trade as best as we can. We have some sort of level tax across the board, whether it's corporate or, personal, right? And we try to get taxes, but then at the same time, we use the dollar or the euro or the pound or whatever as a de facto day-to-day currency, because we know that our currencies are weak. So they have to de facto, instead of it making like an official policy that, okay, we're just going to use the dollar. It's like, look, you know what? The dollar is what's, it's the big stick on the block. We're just going to use it de facto. We'll turn a blind eye to it, but we're going to build up our trade until we get strong enough to say, hey, we don't have to rely on the dollar so much.
I mean, and several South American countries have tried that. And the problem that you run into is that the Fed runs the US dollar for US benefit, not for Nigeria or whoever would peg it to the dollar. And so you can wind up in a real jammed up spot where the US Fed is doing stuff that benefits the US, but it's crashing the Nigerian economy or whatever. I'll give an example of a country that has tried all kinds of stuff like this, and that's Argentina. Argentina has tried pegging to the dollar, creating its own currency, reissuing different currencies. But I don't want to go through the problems. Let's go through the solutions, right? Because nobody is here to hear about why we're losing. We're here about, let's run the tape and figure out how we can win, right, Gasima?
Sure, it's an interesting idea Gastima gave, and the example he gave is brilliant. Of course, the other example is the CFA franc.
Yeah,
West Africa. It hasn't really benefited those West African.
No,
countries.
it benefits franc, and that's where I was going to go. What China is doing is, now that they've got their manufacturing base, they want to be the, I don't want to use Walmart. They want to be the Costco to the world. They want basically to be a warehouse and to supply everybody with their goods. They don't want to necessarily take over the other people. They just want to be the primary supplier, right? So in order to do that, your goods have to be inexpensive. And you're right, Gassim, the African currency is weak enough where their products could be very inexpensive too. But the thing is, you need infrastructure to be able to have manufacturing base. And this, going all the way back to our reparations thing, O'Leary and Gassim, to everything else, is we refuse in the United States, Black Americans and Black Africans, to build to scale mass goods. And I would argue, and I have argued, that it goes all the way back to the African kings and how they screwed up the gold bag and wound up selling slaves. And the reason why now and then is we invent a ton of stuff. We innovate a ton of stuff, but you know what we don't do? We don't manage to manufacture 200 of them of the same quality and to sell them to everybody else. And we've been doing that for centuries. And one of the reasons why we don't do it is because we start calling each other stuff like Tether and FBA and get a good fight and a good lather going. I've seen Tude Niger, I don't know if he's in the chat, come on here and want to mix it up with Gassim and O'Leary. And we do that so much that we never get 500 or 1,000 of these things built, And so where the emphasis needs to go for both Black America and Black Africa is to say, look, number one, we got to set up a tax base so that we can fund ourselves as much as possible. Because guess what? And this is something I brought up before. The global marketplace is built off Black Africans being at the bottom. So if the floor now becomes the middle, then that disrupts their markets and their currencies. Are they going to fund that? Absolutely. Let me say it for the people in the back. No, they're not.
Hell no. Super hell no.
Right? If you're the floor and you're the lowest currency earner in the system, you're the anchor. Are you going to fund the anchor moving up? No, you're not. And so we got to give up on that as a way to get out of this. What has to happen, and I was saying this in the chat, was we have to make at least 5 currencies that are regional. I think my boy Abube was talking about this, and that they're regional. Okay, so that solves the problem of we have all these different ethnic groups that are split over 2 and 3 countries, and some of them are too small to compete with China or to compete with Russia or to compete with Japan. They're too small. So if you have them as one ethnic block in a region, and then you say, okay, I'm going to tie our currency, whatever the echo or whatever it is, to gold and minerals and I don't know, our mining industry, something that's lucrative, right? That's what makes the value of our currency. If we actually had to liquidate it, it's worth X, right? And then from that, you can build a bond market. And from the bond market, then people can invest. And people from the United States and the diaspora and whatever, can invest just like we invest in the stock market here, right? But I would say off the jump, gas him up to go back to where you were like, well, you know, how can we peg the currency? Dude, right off top, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegal, that their new incubator programs say we take 51% off the top. And the reason why we do it when you come in is we're going to hold this as a reserve. And that reserve will then be used to print our currency in addition to making it pegged to gold and the other things that we produce here. What that will do then is it will eliminate the problem that Elvis was talking about of trying to get it from your population, particularly if you don't have numbers to register them. And also, it'll keep that man and woman at the local market selling mangoes or whatever they sell from wanting to riot the place because they went from not having to pay this tax, now having to pay all these taxes, and they can't make a living.
You're right, Philip. Now, here's the annoying part. A lot of these free market capitalists come in here, the Milton Friedman types or the conservatives, they come in there and they tell us that Africa doesn't need that approach. They need a free market approach. And I always tell them they move to Somalia and then they get quiet.
Yeah, it's one of the most free market countries in the world. So is Mexico and countless other countries. Look, I'm not against free markets that are controlled, but there's some things that are just not based for profit. And well, let me put it this way. In the United States, they are, but I don't think it's a good idea. And I would say healthcare is one of them and education is another, where if you're betting against people dying in order to run your healthcare system, then people don't tend to like that because they wind up spending a whole lot of money just to survive, right? So you want to take that off of the table so that, you know, and that's another way to take it full circle. Your doctors can come back. Is because if the doctor is educated in Nigeria or wherever they are, and they get a certain amount of subsidy to buy a home and to live their life, then their salary doesn't have to be as high. But you have to have a tax basis to do it. Did that sound crazy? Am I?
No. I don't disagree with that. From what we've been saying, from what I'm listing, the things that I've got from this discussion is the problems that were pointed out as to why rate of inflation is high, why the currency is low. As was mentioned earlier, the country Nigeria is import heavy. They import a hell of a lot more than they export. One of the the second top import is wheat.
Right, that's right.
Get from Russia. And of course, Russia is involved in a war with Ukraine. So that's going to increase the price of wheat in Nigeria. Whereas if the Nigerians were, I guess, the government was promoting and helping the farmers to grow wheat in Nigeria, those farmers could be selling it to the people, and I guess they would be taxed locally, and that would feed into the economy.
Well, you raised, let me make 2 points here, and then I'm going to bounce out of here. Illyria, that's exactly on point, as usual. And the debt problem, because we didn't answer that about the IMF, the World Bank, the Chinese bank, because all of this is assuming that they don't have somebody from one of these banks saying, dude, you owe us $2 trillion, and so therefore you can think about the taxes later. Right now, we're going to seize your plant or whatever the hell they're seizing, right? Or you're going to do austerity. Here's what I wanted to say. Wait, Illyria, trigger me again. What was the last thing that you just said?
I was talking about Nigeria being import heavy and how they were taking loads of wheat from Russia when they should be doing it for themselves.
Okay, so here's the problem, and I hope everybody in the back, look, I don't know everything, but I'm just going to say this. I'm not the first one to say it. Europe is dependent on cheap goods from Africa, from cheap raw materials. And a lot of people have died because people came in and said, I'm going to raise the price on those raw materials. They're also structurally creating a situation where many of these countries can't grow their own food, which is why it triggered it, Illyria. And the reason why is because if I got you dependent on buying the food from me rather than growing your own food, I can starve you to death if you don't agree with me. If you decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to do an import tax at the port with Elvis. Elvis had a good idea. You know what? I'm going to do a little import tax, and I'm going to take anything that's incorporated here at 51%. And they'll be like, oh, is that right, Elvis? Well, guess what? your food for next month just got cut off. Good luck trying to stay in government.
Or CNN runs a report that Elvis is raping women and we have to save the women. And, you know, Elvis is a terrible African patriarch, and they find the most ugly picture they can find of him maybe holding a machete or something. And say, yes, kill the women. And it's like, yeah, we got to send the Marines.
Two of those
things
are not true.
yeah, Elvis, I didn't want to make you the.
Yeah, no, you're not. No, yeah, Elvis is not. Elvis is a good guy. Elvis is a good guy. He's a great guy, for the record.
We're just trying to do this together, and this is how they run it. And so O'Leary brought it on point, dude. Is that?
But Philip, let me ask you this: don't you think that's and O'Leary? This is what I was saying. You know, you don't like it when I come at these elites.
Yeah.
Part like wheat, for example. We have hundreds. I check the agricultural reports as much as I can. I'm not an expert on agriculture, right? But I research on it. We have hundreds of grains in Africa that we can eat. We don't need Monsanto seeds. We don't have to eat corn. But if you tell the elite and you tell these people, hey, listen, don't eat that rice, don't eat that corn, they get angry at you. They get upset.
Didn't you bring this up last time, Gassama, where the lady came on and she was talking about the GMO seeds and that they had a startup program for GMO seeds? That's a disaster because of what you just said, because then that makes us seed dependent. You got to go to Monsanto to be able to grow anything. You got to be able to grow your own seeds, folks. If you are taking patented seeds from a corporation that is not indigenous to Africa, or even if it was, if they were doing GMO, you're in trouble, because then they could say, okay, no more seeds for you. And if I get you growing your own seeds, I'm going to come and seize your farm because you're messing with our patent.
We do have alternative seeds apart from wheat. We could use millet. You know, we could use cassava, like in the southeast. You know, where the town where I come from, we use cassava to make bread. So I don't know why.
I would even push against cassava, because cassava harms the soil. We have acha, right? We have sorghum. There's teff. There's so many alternatives that are so much better. That, and like what Philip is saying, because look at it, right? I've always said free trade and global trade has only benefited the so-called Westphalian states. Like when Philip is saying African kings dropped the bag, because if you think about all of Africa's wealth that we brag about, whether it's Benin, Old Zimbabwe, Mansa Musa, it was intra-Africa trade. The only time international trade became important is when Europe says we need all goods to come to us. We need all commodities to come to us. We synthesize it in our factories. We consume it, and we give you guys the scraps. And we've been caught up in this. Let me just say this last sentence, Elvis. And we've been caught up in this mindset that everything we do. So we're eating excessive corn. We're eating excessive wheat. And it's like we weren't eating these foods prior to the Portuguese bringing these stuff, particularly in West Africa. We weren't eating cassava in mass amounts. We weren't eating. Cassava is definitely from South America. Corn and a lot of these things are from South America, right? So we need to go back to our indigenous foods and reconstruct how we're going to consume our foods and our lifestyle, so then we can really be independent of Western interests. But that's the hard part, because our elite are so tied into that.
I was going to ask Philip.
I want to say this quickly before you get in, Larry. This might be elementary, right? But what about the idea of trading, IPs for our natural resources? So intellectual properties, right? So technology, these little trace, technology secrets and things like that to start our industrialization of Africa, right?
Where
getting
are
these
they doing
things from
that,
China.
They just steal it.
What do you mean?
That brings me to the other thing.
I see an African teenager a week creating gasless
No.
cars.
I'm talking about the other way around. So we can get IPs from China, because China did the same thing with the U.S. They have these cheap laborers, but they wanted some of that IP, so they can do it themselves, like these.
Oh yeah, brother. I've been saying,
why can't Africa do that? We can trade our gold and diamonds for IPs and stuff like that to help build our industries.
That's where I was going to come in to ask Philip, because when Philip was talking about the same thing, natural resources, I've mentioned it more than once on this channel. I've even given names of some of the companies. They are multinational corporations, Western multinational corporations, Anglo-American, a whole bunch of them, who have been given the contracts to dig up the minerals, the resources. These organizations are very powerful. They even have their own intelligence departments, their own security forces, and in some African countries,
their
security
own armies.
Has worked alongside the state police to suppress the people when the people were complaining about environmental damage. So my question is, how could they be weakened? Because they have so much control over those resources, gold, diamond, cobalt, lithium. They have to be, in order for you and Elvis, what you're talking about, to come to fruition, those guys who have the power, they have to be pushed aside. And I'm curious, how would that be done? I don't know.
I want to quickly answer. It's going to sound silly, but I would say, again, think like a villager. I'm not going to the mines. I will live on what I have. So you send your white boys and get. I think we got to abandon this game. It's just me. I don't like playing a game I can't win. No disrespect to anybody who's short. But
I
yeah,
don't
go ahead.
disagree with that. But if we remember Sierra Leone years ago,
Yes.
they had that military coup, and a lot of people were forced to dig for diamonds at gunpoint by soldiers.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Go
ahead.
I was going to go to that actually. Sorry,
Okay,
Gaston,
sorry.
did you have a point there?
No. Go ahead. That was a great point. He said, good.
No, O'Leary is correct, and that's a big problem. I actually would go to the Black Panther thing where you have to do community education with the folks on the ground to have a philosophy of this is how we're going to build our country. The problem is when you start doing stuff like that, then mysterious people start showing up in your country, and then you wind up, as Sierra Leone did, in a civil war, and people being forced to work. Now, I don't want to be defeatist, right? Because you're like, oh, they're too big. They got the monster squid on our face. What are we going to do? It's alien, man. If you cut the finger of that alien, it gives that acid off, right? Okay, so the answer is, number one, to Elvis's point, you got to adopt the philosophy that the Chinese had, which is we Xerox anything that comes in our border. I don't care what it is. But if you make if you make Post-it notes, the local market with the vendors has Post-it rotes. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
If you make duct tape, we make buck rake, and that also can be found at your local market. Okay, this is literally what the Chinese did. Now there were agreements, not to break the IP licenses, but good luck trying to enforce that judgment in China, right? And so you have to have that, right? That's just off top, Elvis, to get us Liberia back, right? The biggest thing.
Philip, to Two Niger's point, that's what that Sierra Leone war, O'Leary, is what Abacha is who helped stop the Sierra Leone war, if I'm not mistaken, right? The Nigerian military,
yeah,
the ECOMOG soldiers. Yeah, the ECOMOG soldiers. Yeah, so it was a strong military. So I think it's Two Niger's point is very correct that if we have a strong defense, at least we'll be able to stop people from coming in. And I've always said it. I have no beef with Abacha, man. I did my research. That guy is not. He refused the IMF loan, O'Leary, and all of a sudden, Abacha loot. All of a sudden,
the problem with Abacha is, and I've done the research, and we can have another show about it. He did take a lot of money out. The Swiss government was involved. The island of Jersey.
No, his sons, and the amount they said it was $5 billion. But if it was, they've never been able to remember this guy. He never left the country.
His sons took the money, but he didn't.
But here's the thing. No, hold on, wait, because that can happen. I'm a parent too. I'm a parent. I don't know everything that my child does. That's just one. But here's the thing. I will say this, not in defense. I will say this, Larry, because Wale Soyinka was trying to plan a coup. Why the hell is a Nobel laureate? What Illuminati is he connected to that he's able to plan coups and all these guys? That's my first thing, right?
If Soyinka is trying to plan a coup, I don't think anybody here is supporting that.
No, I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying that these guys are all tied to Western interest. And I'm a believer that whenever you go against the West, they're going to turn you into a pariah. So what I'm saying is with Abacha, as explained by the guy who's running for president of Nigeria now, Al-Mustafa, who is his chief security officer, and I'm not saying these guys are angels. I personally don't believe in the nation state. But Al-Mustafa is saying that at that time, because they knew sanctions were coming because Abacha was refusing the IMF loans, their idea was to use certain individuals to have money outside so they can still transact business on a global scale because Nigeria was going to be sanctioned. I don't know if that's 1,000% true or not, but what I do know is that the so-called $5 billion that Abacha stole is not true. The money does not add up.
I don't know about 5 billion.
How is it not true?
I don't know about 5. I don't know about 5 billion. What I do know is that there were hundreds of millions that were stolen, and the island of Jersey, Switzerland, the Swiss government, they looked at the documentation. They even signed a treaty with Nigeria to help. They froze the assets of Abacha in Switzerland. And
no, not Abacha. They froze his son. They froze his sons at the. Let's be clear. They never froze. Abacha never left the country.
What they did was they froze the assets because those assets were being used by the Abacha family. The son was then arrested in Germany, extradited. He was then
yes. And do you know the Italian lawyer that was hired by Obasanjo to help recover the assets? Like I said, I've done the research. Right? Look. Abiola, hold on, Larry. Abiola was killed.
I just want to finish this. So what you're saying is that the family or the son stole all this money from Nigeria, but the father, Sani Abacha, was not aware.
I'm saying this, that allegedly they say it was 5 billion. This is what they say, but I know it was made up, the amounts that they say, because they were never able to fully refund the money to Nigeria because Nigeria has the perfect open and shut case. All the documentation was provided and they've only given Nigeria a certain amount because they made most of that money up. Remember, Abacha refused the IMF loan. So because he refused the IMF loan, he became enemy number one. But I'm not excusing Larry. I'm just saying his sons may have taken money. But Okonjo Iweala is also guilty. Jonathan, there's no Nigerian head of state, as Fela said, that has never stole. But what I'm saying is that we had a strong military during the time of Abacha that Sierra Leone was able to benefit from. So regardless if he stole money or not, when Abacha was alive, I believe, and I hope Nigerians vote for Al Mustafa. And I'm from the Delta. There's no. I'm just being honest. I hope Nigerians vote for Al Mustafa because that's the one that's going to fight. He's the only one that admitted that right now the Boko Haram and herdsmen nonsense is really about lithium. No one talks about that. All of northern Nigeria is filled with lithium, and all of a sudden they're not talking about the lithium that's in northern Nigeria, and they're destabilizing the Nigerian state so they can get access to the minerals.
Heading the strike force that was intimidating and killing Nigerians.
Yes, Nigeria should be killed. Nigeria should be killed because a lot of us are criminals. We have 419 mentality, and that's why people like Philip and Dinus can't come to Nigeria and walk the streets safe.
We're going off the cliff here. Hold on.
Guys, I'm just talking greasy right now. Stop that, man.
Hold on, guys. We're going off the cliff here. We're going down a spiral, and we gotta destroy everything to rebuild it because it's broken. And listen, Black America is one of the first places where people say that. You have people screaming at Russell Westbrook about his lack of passion for the game. But the point being that, hold on, guys, I understand there's a theft problem at the top in every one of these countries. I looked at that. What is it, Angola, where it's one of the richest families in the continent, and is it Dos Santos? Right, the Dos Santos guy, and he died.
Yeah, but the daughter I think she got arrested.
Thank goodness. But yeah, I mean, look, and she was hanging out in fashion shows and all the rest with Paris Hilton. And look, what makes that happen? This is one of the dangerous things. Look, if you have a democracy. Okay, and this is a larger discussion. Gas him up. You've talked about this a little bit. If you have a democracy, then when I come in as big megacorp, I got to deal with your parliament. I got to deal with your PM, your prime minister. I got to deal with whoever is your official on that area, depending on what I'm bringing in. And that's just too many damn people. Most of these big corporations, they don't want to deal with more than 3 or 4 people to make the decision. What China did is they were like, look, we got a huddle mentality here. So, you could say it could go all the way back to the clan model that they had, in ancient China. But the bottom line is that our government is a clan model for these various civilizations that fall under the title China. that basically you only got to deal with 4 or 5 people to put this in here, right? And what I'm suggesting is that a lot of these African countries have to come up with something that's uniquely African. Maybe I would say like some sort of confederacy of the various ethnic groups in order to empower a group of trusted leaders or elders or something like that, that is a hybrid of what China does and what quote unquote a democracy does. I think the last time that I was on here, I talked about the problem with the American form democracy in terms of its constitutional issue. Elvis, this is really big. I learned this from the Liberia channel as well. Look, if you want to see what goes wrong with the American Constitution, look at Liberia in terms of if you don't have a middle class, then the system doesn't work. It favors monopoly, okay? And Liberia's, and in Liberia's case, they don't control even the monopoly businesses that they run. That it's hybrided between the United States and a bunch of multinationals. And
shout out to Focus on Liberia. Everybody should check out that channel. I'm on there most of the time. Yeah,
that's the channel I've been watching with Carl. But bottom line is, look, we can solve it, gas them up. Don't give up hope, brother. But we don't want to turn into Egypt. In Egypt, what they did was they empowered their military to the point where they can run the table at any given point. And the reason why is Africa has a unique problem. It's a civilization state like China is, and some of the other, you could make that argument about Japan. You definitely can make it about the Philippines. But the issue is you have so many ethnicities. How do you get them to see themselves as one, as Nigerian or as, Ghanaian or whatever it is? And the answer is a lot of times military, because they're part of the army and they're army first, and then they're whatever ethnicity they are second. And so it's a unifying device, but it's also a problematic device because then they're more unified than the country itself. What my answer is, gas him up. And Dynas, you had a dude on there. It was a tech guy that was talking about this, that said that we had to come up with an African solution to developing our own corporations. I forget what that guy's name is.
It might have been African always. But guys, I apologize. You're right. Dos Santos has not been arrested, but she's on the run.
Yeah, it was her brother. Her brother got arrested.
Yeah,
I know, but the whole family is like on the run. I know that Isabel, she's wanted like that.
But here's my question, Dynas. I'm not saying that we should excuse her, but is the Bush family on the run? Are the Cheneys on the run? Yeah, she's a thief. She shouldn't be stealing. But you get what I'm saying? Like, why is it when it's time for justice, Africans get so, yes, let's arrest our leaders, but nobody's arresting, the American leaders.
Well, yeah,
I disagree that she's a thief, though. I disagree she's a thief.
Well,
it's her dad's fault.
It doesn't matter. The country has not benefited from their leadership, however they got it, right? So, and yes, Gassam, you're right. That's why the African countries get sent to The Hague, and we didn't sign on to that treaty because we didn't want our people sent to The Hague.
Well, technically speaking, that Nigeria seems to be immune from that because a lot of the military dictators never really got taken. In fact, none of the dictators got taken to The Hague.
They shouldn't be. I'm glad they will never be. That's a good thing.
So I'm saying there's certain African countries that don't seem to have that. Like Idi Amin, he ended up in Saudi Arabia, living the rest of his life happy. So certain African countries, certain corrupt or dictatorial leaders, they don't really get held to account.
That's because some of the African, the Nigerian leaders are working for the the Western power, basically.
That's correct.
That's why they were untouchable, you know?
That's correct. I just am saying that we have to have a hybrided African form of government that allows the conditions like Diane was talking about this, one of the last shows in Rwanda, where it's a small group of people. What's this guy's name that everybody is controverted about that's in Rwanda with the mustache? I forget his name.
Is it Joseph Kony?
No,
Kagame.
Kagame. Yeah, that
one with the
what
Hitler
he has is a good situation for foreign investment, right? Because you don't have to deal with too many people beyond Kagame to invest there. The problem is, dude, you can't build a thriving economy for yourself with just foreign investment, bro. It doesn't work like that. If they're investing to get something out, not to leave it there, right? So,
you guys are going to ignore that Kagame and Kissinger seem to be cool? Because, Larry, we talking about The Hague. I mean, how come The Hague has never talked about Henry Kissinger and all these type of guys? You know? So I'm not saying that that we should excuse African stealing, but they threw Ibori in prison, which he stole, right? James Ibori from Delta State, he stole. But how dare England prosecute? It's just like, come on, like these white folks, these European systems, they have a lot of nerve. I sent you an article, Philip, where the Nigerian, the American politician, she was an African American lady, she was advocating heavy during the time of Abacha, and she was traveling, and she was pointing out America's hypocrisy because she says, "Oh, you're mad at Abacha and Al Mustafa allegedly doing things to Nigerians, but they kept quiet during China's human rights violations." And they were doing great business with China. So it's just like, look, why the double standard?
I looked at that actually, Gassim Up. I just didn't get a chance to respond to you. You're talking about Carol Moseley Braun. And
yes.
I'm from Chicago originally. And I actually, one of my childhood friends worked on her campaign. He was one of her leaders for her campaign. Here's the problem that Carol Moseley Braun and a lot of the Black American politicians run into, which is they got to fundraise from a whole bunch of people that have no interest in what they're interested in. And by the time they're done, they're turned inside out into black Muppets that represent whoever gave them money to get elected. And that was true, unfortunately, in the case of Carol Moseley Braun. By the time she got into the Senate, she owed so many people so much money that she was, pulled between what her natural interests were and the people that she owed money to. And I have said this before, I will repeat this for the people in the back. Black political leaders, doesn't matter what party, they're there to contain movement politics by Black people. They're not there to encourage movements that will disrupt the status quo. Understand it, take it to heart, embrace the horror that is a fund or pay for play system. If one person gives you $1 million and another person gives you $35 a month, who are you listening to first? You just ask yourself. So if you are disappointed in X, Y, or Z politician, just think about how much you donated to their campaign. And let me just say this. Even when we do donate the kind of money that should give us some access, it still is against the multinationals that also give them money. Because remember, folks, we're the floor of this whole thing. So if that politician goes in and starts changing the situation, so we're no longer the floor and we're no longer consumers only and we're asset holders, then that's a problem, right? Because their whole business model is based on you buying from me forever. You will be my customer forever, son, to be determined. And so we got to see the situation clearly and get to work on that, which is what O'Leary is talking about this debt. O'Leary, when you said that, brother, man, I was scratching my head for months. Like, O'Leary's got something here about this.
Phil, does that apply to China? Because everybody's running to the arms of the Chinese, and the Chinese typically want us in terms of consuming their products. Will the Chinese be comfortable on the global marketplace where African manufacturing has a rise to compete?
Oh, well, no. They got a different, what they're trying to do, because they know that the Western powers are going, and they already are trying, right, with Taiwan, with the semiconductors, right? And they just passed this bill to unplug Americans working there and so on, that they know they're going to be blockaded. So what the Chinese are doing is they're setting up a flank with the African industrialization, right? What they're saying is, we know that you're going to try to shut down, you're going to try to put a two-man defense on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up satellite economies that are loyal to me because I actually helped them build a deep water port, or I actually built a high-speed rail, or I actually built a dam. And when they come back and think about it, they will say, should I go with the country that gives me IMF or World Bank austerity? Or should I go with the country that helped me put that deep water port in that we're bringing goods in here? And so, no, the Chinese are running a different game. And basically, let me put it this way. The same investment that they put into China and into Asia, into South Korea and Japan and Thailand, they could have put into Africa. They could have put that. Listen, Liberia is a satellite country with, in theory, people that came from their country that would be loyal to them, in theory, right? Why didn't they put that in Liberia? Answer, because if I do that, then the floor becomes the middle and it disrupts my markets.
Not only that, they took those factories out of inner cities where Black people were predominantly staying.
Right. They kicked the legs out from under that. So that stops this civil rights nonsense that's been disrupting my markets. I can't have that. I can't have folks that are out here getting out in the street and getting people upset.
What's the name of that thing that you posted before, where it was a guy from the Department of Commerce, where he was like, we got to target Black people again? I totally forgot it.
My friend.
What's it called?
Lewis Powell memo.
Powell memo. Okay, I'm going to get that.
Just Google it. It's out there. Former Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell drafts a memo in 1972, coming up with the strategy that they have. They implemented it then. It's now reality. Almost everything that's in that memo is real. Now, it was a theory then. But yeah, man, I mean, look, this isn't brain surgery, but we got to go with what O'Leary's talking about. We got to figure out a way about this debt, brother. That's a real big problem. And then you got to build a tax basis, and that's what I was here to stay. Once again, I stayed much longer than I should have. but Dynast, man, you have such a great show, man. I find myself pressing.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you,
brother. So I'm gonna bounce out of here, and I appreciate you guys, man, and keep the struggle, and don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. We can win this thing. But we got to be real about what the real problem is, and the real problem is, look, we got to solve this thing with the African kings all the way back. If somebody invents something like the cordless TV, we got to be able to make 2,000 of them. But we also have to be able to do it without creating wage slaves. And the way that it's got to be is we got to lean on technology more than China or any of the Asian countries, because we don't want to create wage slaves. And the only way that you do that is by having robots instead of workers doing the stuff. So the way that you do that is you got to, these young kids that we see every day online inventing stuff, you got to put money behind that when they invent it and then mass produce that thing so that we can scale our economies. But you need bond markets to be able to fund them. You can't expect people to work for charity. That doesn't work.
And at the same time, you need to create an enabling environment for the local manufacturers and the small business owners, like Larry said, and the local indigenous engineers in the country to be able to, like, giving them tax incentives, tax rebates, and all that. Create maybe giving them don't tax them for the next 3 years until they're able to make profit and stand on their feet, things like that. Can encourage and boost a lot of young people who are going into manufacturing and going into starting their own businesses.
Well, we could do it if we have incubators. And I mean, there are incubators that exist in these countries, but what you need, look, man, when I was doing the stuff in Vietnam, they had free trade zones throughout that country. They had one in Haiphong, they had one up in Hanoi. And basically, they took 51% of whatever went in there, but they encouraged foreign investment, right? And we could do that in Nigeria. I've looked online, they do have incubators there, but they're not state sponsored, and there's no real money behind it where, this young kid that comes up with a great seed or planting thing is getting money, like a mini VC, like micro venture capital to come in and scale it. But, this is a problem in Black America as well, man, is we have a great idea, but we don't mass produce it, man. And we don't create systems where we can mass produce it, where we can make 1 million of X widget, right? And that's what we need to focus on.
Philip, it's interesting you say that about the mass production, right? You look at, for example, African fashion. A lot of African fashion designers, I was watching a video, the guy said when he came to America, I think I was on 2Niger's platform one time, and he said that, for example, with fashion, he said in Nigerian fashion, the average Nigerian woman does not want to wear the same. She might wear a similar outfit, but unless it's like for a party or a wedding or a funeral or something, nobody wants to wear the exact same material. And he said that it was interesting to him that coming to America, you would see women wear the exact same material. I always call it this Newtonian universalism that's a part of the West, right? And so how do we get a mass scale when a lot of times the consumption patterns of some of the people, like just with fashion, for example, is not, this universalist mass style where it's like Dynast, his outfit, I don't want his outfit to look like mine.
We can do it, brother. We have something here in LA called Santee Alley. Do you guys know Santee Alley, Dynast?
Yeah, I know. It's nothing but junk down there, though.
No, brother, you're missing it. It seems like it's all junk, but what they had down there is something called micro fashions. Do you know what I'm talking about, Dynast?
I used to live literally right around the corner from the fashion district in LA. Like literally right around the corner from there. It was just a bunch of junk at Santee Alley.
I'm going to explain what you missed, Dynast. And I know what you're saying. Look, it's a bunch of it looks like an open market in any third world country, right? Where they have the bodegas and they're all kind of open storefront, whatever. But here's what I was going to tell you, Dynast. Globally, people come to Santee Alley because they have these micro fashions gas them up, and they run different levels of clothing that are inexpensively made and made for people who don't make a lot of money. And some of them are really catchy in terms of, like, you'll see them all over LA because people like these kinds of jeans or these kinds of t-shirts or whatever it is. And they call them micro fashions. Actually, what American Apparel, the company that went out of business because their CEO was, shall we say, inappropriate, that he was trying to capture and scale up the micro factions from Santee Alley. So the answer is, Gassima, that look, if you can produce those same styles but inexpensively in the local marketplaces, but that they're quality enough that people can wear them a few times, it'll work. And it'll work both in the United States and it'll work in Africa.
Well, what I mean, Philip, is like this, right? Because I get what you're saying. So now, let's say I know a lot of tailors, right? Dynast has good tailors. I'm sure Larry has good tailors. We all have different tailors in Nigeria and in all parts of Africa. I'm sure Jose has good tailors, right? You have like the Igbo style, the Yoruba style, with your dashiki, you have your lace or buba oro, the Delta women dress a certain way. So now here's the thing. So let's say you have a seamstress and a tailor, right? They have a nice design. I'm just thinking, let's say you want to sell some of their outfits to a person like yourself. You like African outfits. I want to get you something. It's going to be difficult for me to scale or for them to scale, just thinking out loud, to say, okay, this outfit that they make, this one design, they might be able to make, let's say 5, but they need a factory where they can make like 40 and make it quickly and then sell online and sell to you then their next design. So I guess perhaps maybe, there needs to be investment in factories where these artisanal, is that what it's called? These people who have these skills can go with their design, make like 30 of them in mass, sell it, come back with new designs. So they're not pushed out because, like you said, you don't want them to become a wage slave. I don't want my tailor to be reduced to just working in a factory making one specific design for, Neiman Marcus or Gap.
That ties in indirectly with what you guys were talking about, what Philip was talking about, which was underinvestment in the public infrastructure. Because when that business develops the stuff to sell, it needs good logistics, the supply chain to be able to deliver to the customers on time. Something that we take for granted when we're in the West. But as gassed them up in, say, Lagos State with the traffic, the roads, that type of stuff needs to be eliminated. So I guess public infrastructure, they build more roads.
Exactly.
Well,
because Philip, it's a problem. Like if I tell my tailor that, I have some great designs and my tailor wants to send you some stuff, one, just to ship you like an outfit, it's going to cost a lot of money. Like to make the outfit isn't expensive per se, if we look at it dollar to naira. But to get it to you, because like Larry said, the traffic, and then UPS is going to charge this much, and FedEx, and blah, 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 just to get it to you, it damn near eats all the profit. So there has to be some sort of way to get these tailors and these people who are skilled to be able to make their products in mass, still be able to sell in the market without reducing them to wage slavery.
Wait a minute, Philip. Sorry, there's something. Yesterday, I was on Dynast's show, and he mentioned that in Senegal, you were doing something with masks. How were you transporting them? Did you have any problems delivering them? Was their supply chain really good over there, Dynast, if you're still there? Is he still there? No, he's not there. So I was wondering how he was delivering and selling his products in Senegal, because he mentioned his business yesterday when he had
We'll have to ask him when he comes back. But here's my answer, gas him up, is we got to get on board with this high-speed rail freight. That's part of how Vietnam solved its problem. High-speed rail freight. Vietnam, when I was there, we worked on a thing to improve their railway system because they did all their freight on the roads, and they have terrible rainy seasons, and a lot of people were dying on the roads. I'm sure this is also true, because you can't have freights and those little Vespa scooters in the same thing, particularly with a lot of rain. It's disastrous. And I'm sure that that's true in a lot of African countries. I know you guys have talked about it on the channel. So what you got to get on board with.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, brother. I got to get out of here, man. I've been screwed.
No. Well, yeah, we're about to close out, but finish your statement.
Hey, Dynast, we got a question for you after Philip. Larry got a quick question.
Is that the high-speed rail freight that the Chinese are helping a lot of these countries? I know Nigeria, Ghana has been working on the high-speed rail. You got to get the high-speed rail freight and get off the boats. You got to get out of because that's where we lose, folks. We lose when we go on the boats because the Brits and the Americans control the boats. Got it? So when it goes on the boat, then the fees go up and then you lose your profit. So you got to get in the trains for high-speed rail freight. But to answer Gasimov's thing about your tailor and whatever, what they do in Santee Alley is a combination. There are some suppliers that have warehouses, and then they supply the bodegas for like 20 of them in that open market, right? So it's the same guy that sells that. Let's say he made 200, and he gives it to 40 bodegas, right? So all of them have some of his 200. Right. But then you have people in Santee Alley themselves that they got the damn sewing machine right there in the shop. So if you want it done, they're literally producing it on the spot. They have the pieces and then they make it, they assemble it there to order. Right. And they got a bunch of sewing machines. And so that's how they get their micro fashion. Right. And then if it becomes popular, then they sell it to the other 20 bodegas right by them. They don't care. They just want to move product. And we got to be flexible, brother. That India, ironically, their whole economy is based like that. It's not a big bunch of mega companies, although it is now, but primarily they make their money because they've got, what do they call that? Redundancies of all of their small businesses, so that if you knock down some of it, the whole infrastructure is still there because you can knock down a few of it. Do you understand what I'm saying, Gassama?
No, perfect. You just gave me a bunch of great ideas. I'm gonna go do my research. But Larry, please ask Dynast that question.
Hey,
I want
guys,
to
I'm bouncing. I cannot be here one more minute.
Go ahead, Philip. Way to go, Philip. We'll see you later.
I love you guys, man.
Philip.
Take care and keep the conversation going. And don't lose hope, folks. We can do it. The win is out there.
Go ahead, Larry.
Take care, Philip. Yeah, we were talking about small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and we brought up I brought up the discussion of supply chain. And I was curious, your business in Senegal, what was your experience when it came to distributing your products? Did you have any problems with logistics, the supply chain? Was it smooth?
No, actually, I just have a travel company, so I don't really deal with supply chain. My supply chain is bringing people to Senegal and to Africa, to these countries. So yeah, but I'm registered.
What about the mosques? You mentioned something about those mosques. Did they have to be delivered to you, or?
No, it's hassle getting them, shipping them.
Yeah, shipping them, right? That's what I was trying to find out. So like when you're shipping them, you still, to get the UPS, the FedEx, all these things turn and they start eating away at your profits.
Right. It's expensive to sell the ship, and then also too, they don't have the facilities to properly package items.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well, I know you say you got to go, right?
Yeah. So we're gonna close out. Everyone, thank you so much for joining.
Larry, peace. Jose, peace.
Yeah, Jose.
Thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynast Amir, Search for Uhuru. Peace.